Hello friends! Today we are gonna create this beautiful portfolio page using Tailwind CSS. You are gonna learn the most common usage of Tailwind utilities by creating a real-world project. Before starting, I will cover all the basics of Tailwind that we need: installation, configuration, theme customization, and more. And we are gonna use the greatest strength of Tailwind called Mobile First Breakpoint System. And you will see how easy to create fully responsive websites using only class names. Then we will go ahead and create this dark mode toggle, and we will be able to change our themes in a second. It's an awesome project to learn Tailwind from scratch. And finally, we are gonna deploy this website using a hosting service. As always, we will be using Hostinger. It's my favorite hosting provider and the sponsor of this video. It's my favorite because I've been using Hostinger for 2 years and never had a single issue. Servers are really fast and you can deploy all your websites in one hosting. And the best thing is you are gonna get a free domain and free SSL certificate at this price. Choose your time period here, and if you use the link in the description below or Lama Dev coupon code here, you are gonna get an extra discount. After choosing the payment methods and purchasing, you are gonna redirect it to Hostinger panel. So let's claim our free domain and set up our hosting. I'm gonna write a domain name. After the registration, it's ready to use. So let's set up our hosting, start from scratch, and I'm gonna select my domain name. Now we can finish the setup. It's gonna take a while, and right after that you are gonna see your panel here. And this panel is really user friendly. You can manage your hosting, your domains, your files, and you are gonna see how easy to deploy any website using this file manager in a minute. So if you are ready, let's create our website and deploy it here. Okay. Firstly, I want to show you some features of Tailwind before starting our project, so it will be easier for beginners. Of course, I will not talk about what the Tailwind is, all those boring introductions. If you are watching this video, you already know what it's used for. Probably you just need practice. To understand Tailwind capabilities, I will open up its playground, play.tailwindcss.com, and here I want to create a div, and inside let's say Lama Dev. Okay, as you can see, its reflection is here. So I'm gonna give here a class name, and let's see what we can do. For example, we can change its color. I will say text. As you can see, all those properties are here. We can give any color like that, or we can give font size. Actually, I will just move with my keyboard. As you can see, small, large, X large, 2X large. It works like that. And it's really easy to use. Let's say something like that. And I want to give text color, let's say blue 800. I can give font weight. As you can see, extra light, light, normal, medium. Let's give bold. I can give any padding like that. I can give background color. Let's say red, for example, like this. I can give any width or height, let's say 56 for example. And as you can see, its actual size is here. It's 14 rem and 224 pixels. Or I can give any height, let's say 32. It works like that. It's that easy. For all those properties, you can check the documentation of Tailwind. You will find everything here. I'm not gonna explain everything one by one. It's gonna take hours. But what I want to say is do not try to memorize anything. Just use this documentation and just open up this page whenever you need. And there is one more important thing, and it's responsive design. This is my favorite feature of Tailwind CSS because it actually uses mobile first approach. If you used any other framework like Bootstrap, probably you are familiar with it. Let me show you how it works. Basically, when you write any CSS property here, it applies for small screens first. Let me show you its breakpoints. As you can see, there are some common breakpoints here. Small screens, medium screens, and others. And everything you write here applies for this small screen first. And if you want to change your CSS style for other screens, you have to indicate them. Otherwise, it's going to apply for all screens like that. As you can see, nothing is changing. So let's say I want to change its height between this small screen and medium screen. To do that, I should use this breakpoint prefix. I will say small, and height will be, let's say, 56. As you can see, it's still the same, but if I move this screen, and as you can see, it's getting bigger in this point because it's our breakpoint. If I come here and say for medium screens, text color will be, let's say, white. Let's try. I'm coming here, and as you can see, after this breakpoint, it's white. It works like that. And it's really useful. Let me show you one example and you are gonna understand why. Let's move this here and delete everything here. Let's create a div. And I will give class name, and I wanna give background color. It's gonna be blue, and let's say this color. And I want to make this div full screen. Remember how we are using this in CSS? We are using height and 100 VH. We will do exactly the same thing here. I will say height, but this time we are using screen. And as you can see, its value is here, 100 VH. And I want to center everything inside this div. To do that, we can use flexbox. I will say align item center. To do that, we are using item center, and justify content center. To do that, I will say justify center. And that's all, it's here. Now, instead of this text, let's create another div. And it's gonna be a box. I will say class, background color will be white. And I'm gonna give some width and height. 48, height 48. And for small screen, let's say 64. Again, height 64. You have to write this small again and again. You cannot do like that. And for medium, let's say 96. I'm gonna move this screen. As you can see, it's bigger. And for the medium screen, it's that easy. Let's give a better example. I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna create another div. Again, it's gonna be a box, and inside I'm gonna create a user image and username, and under them I'm gonna create a text. So let's create div. It's gonna include our image. I'm gonna copy this link, and after that I will say Jane Doe. Let's give a width and height for this image. I will say class, width will be 8, height will be the same. To keep its ratio, I will say object width, and it's gonna be cover, like that. Okay, right now I can give class for my main div. It's gonna be again white, let's say BG white. I'm gonna give some padding, it's gonna be 4. I wanna give border radius. To do this, I'm gonna use rounded. As you can see, small, medium, large, and others. Let's use large. And I want to give some shadow. Again, small, medium, large. Let's use 2x large. As you realize, there is a dark shadow here. And for this image and span container, I'm gonna say display flex. So it's gonna be horizontal. To center them, I will say item center, and I can give gap between them. Let's say 2. As you can see, they are separated right now. Let's make this image circle. I will say rounded, and it's gonna be full. Like that. And I want to create one more div here. and it's gonna include a p tag, and inside I will copy and paste my text like that, and under that a span. I'm gonna paste. Let's give class name. I'm gonna give a color, text gray, and let's say 400. I wanna make this text smaller, and for this p tag I'm gonna say italic, and font weight will be thin, so I will say font thin. I can give some space between those divs. I will say class name, margin top is gonna be 2, like that. And for this main div, maybe I can give some padding, like that. As you can see, it looks pretty good for small screen, but I want to change its behavior somewhere here. I want to see bigger image, and I want to make them horizontal. To do that, firstly, I will give flexbox here. So I will say small, and it's gonna be flex. So if I extend this screen, as you can see, it's horizontal right now. I can delete this padding and I can give space between them. I will say if it's small, gap will be, let's say 16, and padding will be 0, like that. Let's increase this image size. It's gonna be full height. I will come here. As you can see, it was 8. I will say small screen, height will be full, which means 100%. And I'm gonna give width, it's gonna be 36. And I wanna delete this rounded. Small, rounded, and none. As you can see, it looks much better right now. For small screens, it's like a square and it's vertical. And for bigger screens, it's gonna be horizontal like that. And it's awesome, guys. It makes everything easier. But how we are gonna create a Tailwind project in our VS Code? Let's come here. As you can see, to install Tailwind, we are gonna need some steps here, but don't worry, it's really easy. Firstly, we are gonna install Tailwind CSS. I'm gonna copy here, and in the VS Code, I'm gonna paste to my terminal. By the way, if you don't have Node.js in your computer, make sure that you install that first. Otherwise, you won't be able to install any library using npm. I'm gonna enter, and after that, we are gonna initialize our application. Like that. And as you can see, there is a config file here. We are gonna make all theme customization here. You are gonna see soon. And here we should provide our files, which we are gonna use for Tailwind. In this case, we are gonna have just a index.html here. And we are gonna use Tailwind inside this HTML file. So basically, I will say in main folder index.html. Or if you are using any other HTML files, basically you can say all HTML files. After that, we should create input CSS. Input.css. I will paste it. And finally, we are gonna build our application. I will copy this and paste here. Basically, it takes this input CSS and build a CSS file that we are gonna use inside index.html. You are gonna understand better. But before, let's delete this source part because we don't have any source. I'm gonna enter. And as you can see, there is an output here, and it includes default CSS elements. But how we are gonna use this CSS file? I'm just gonna write here link and dist output CSS. So we are able to reach this file right now. I'm gonna come here and copy my codes, and I'm gonna paste here. As you can see, something has changed. Let's open up output CSS and scroll down. And as you can see, these are what we have used in our index file. All those properties are here. Basically, whatever you apply in this HTML file, it's gonna directly affect this CSS file. So Tailwind CSS doing everything for you. We are giving only class names and they are immediately here. It works like that. By the way, we are gonna be using this extension. As you can see, this is how it predicts what we are gonna write. It's really useful. Whenever you write any letter, as you can see, it gives those recommendations. And finally, if you want to customize your theme, you can use this config file. For example, let's say colors. Let's say this gray color, and we will be able to use this color everywhere. Let's say background and my color. As you can see, it's here. In the same way, you can add here your font family, your spacing, screens, anything you want to customize. Okay, that's all I think. We can start our project. But before, I want to say something. If you don't know CSS, or if you feel you don't have enough CSS knowledge, starting with Tailwind might not be a good idea. If you didn't create any website using pure CSS, I recommend you to watch my video about Tailwind and Bootstrap. I think it will give some ideas about starting from scratch. So that video will be in the description and in the cards. You can watch it and decide. Okay, anyway, let's create our portfolio page. Okay, I created a new folder and inside, let's install Tailwind. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I will copy this and I'm gonna initialize my Tailwind like that. And inside config file, I should provide my HTML or JavaScript files. In this case, we are gonna use this main folder. So I'm gonna come here and say, check the main folder and take every HTML file inside. And I'm gonna create input CSS. I will copy them. New file input.css. I'm gonna paste. And finally, I'm gonna build my Tailwind. I will paste here. Of course, I'm gonna delete here. We don't have any source file. It's gonna be our main folder. And for the output, let's say CSS folder and create style.css. I'm gonna enter, and as you can see, it's here. Okay, perfect. Let's create an HTML file here. I will say index.html. I'm gonna create my document, and let's say Tailwind portfolio, and I'm gonna link my CSS file. I'm gonna say link CSS folder and style CSS. Let's try. I'm gonna create here h1 tag and let's say hello. And for the class name, I'm gonna say text red 500. I'm gonna open with live server and it's here. Okay, it works. I can delete here and let's see what we are gonna create. Okay, as you can see, it's going to be our first section. It's going to include this navbar and this introduction. And it's going to cover all screen, which means I'm going to make it 100 VH. So let's start. I will say intro section. And let's create our first div. And inside we are going to have our navbar. Let's create nav tag here. And after that, we are going to have our content, which includes this text, this image, and this div. So I'm going to say intro content. And I'm going to create another div. Okay, we are going to handle them, but before I just want to change something inside Tailwind. In Tailwind, by default, it uses these breakpoints, but I want to change this small number. I think it's too big. How I'm gonna do this? I'm gonna come here, config file. I'm gonna use exactly the same sizes for other screens like MD, LG, but I just wanna change this one. To do that, I'm gonna go to extend object and I will say screens and I will say small screen and it's gonna be 480. And also we are gonna use this font family. If you go to Google Fonts, you can find it. I've just chosen all of those styles. Only thing I should do is to take this link and paste inside my HTML. Let's paste here. Like that. And inside config file, I'm gonna create a font family. I will say font family. So let's name our font family. It's gonna be Nanito. And let's check what we are gonna need. Font family, Nanito, and sans serif. Let's copy them and paste here. Of course, it should be in code like that. And let's try again. I'm gonna come here and say h1 test. And for the small screen, it's gonna be, let's say, red. And if it's more than small, it's gonna be text blue, let's say 500, and let's test. As you can see, it's blue right now, and I'm gonna move this console, and under 480 is gonna be red. Let's check 500. Okay, perfect, it works. And for font family, I'm gonna come here inside body. I will say font Nanito. Like that. Okay, I'm gonna delete this h1. And for this div, I'm gonna say class name. Let's check our website here. I'm gonna open console here. And as you can see, its height is half of this screen. As you can see, still. But if I get more than X large, like that, as you can see, it's full screen. To do that, I'm gonna say H half screen, and if it's LG, it's gonna be H screen, which means 100 VH. As you can see, it's here. You should definitely add this extension so you will be able to see its actual size here. It's really useful. So I'm gonna say H screen, and what I'm gonna do is giving this linear gradient background. To do that, I'm gonna say background gradient to top. So we are gonna start from bottom and we are gonna go to top. Let me close this sidebar, by the way. Okay, it's better. And I'm gonna write bottom color. To do that, I will say from indigo to 100. It's gonna start from 200 and it's gonna reduce this color. And at the top, as you can see, it's gonna be white. Of course, you can indicate here any other color by saying 2 red 500. As you can see, it's gonna start from indigo and it's gonna go to red. It's that easy. Okay, perfect. Let's check our size, by the way. I'm gonna open mobile version. As you can see, it's half screen. When I move my screen, it's gonna be bigger. Okay, so let's create our navbar. Let's say class name. I'm gonna make this fixed position. That's because when we scroll through our application, it's gonna stay here. It's not gonna be disappeared. To do that, I should give any position and it's gonna be top. In this case, it's gonna stick the top 0. And let's say background color is gonna be white. And inside, I'm gonna create a container. That's because if I don't do that, let me close here. If I don't do that, when I add any item inside, it's gonna start from here. But I just wanna create a container and make every items centered. Let's check our application. I'm gonna close here. And as you can see, there's a container here and it keeps everything centered. I will say div. Let's write here something and I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. As you can see, it starts from here. If I change this color, you will understand better. Of course, I want to make this full screen, so I'm gonna say with full. Okay, as you can see, it starts from here. So if I give container property for this second div, and if I give auto margin, it's gonna give default spacing according to current screen size. What I mean by that, I will say class container and mx will be auto. I'm saying mx that because it's gonna be horizontal margin from left and right. And as you can see, there is a space here. If I shrink here, automatically gives a space. And it's awesome. And for all screen types. Perfect. What else I can give? I can give a padding. Let's say vertical padding is gonna be 5, which means 20 pixels, like that. And I'm gonna make this container flexbox, that because we are gonna have our logo here, our links, and this button. So I will say flex, and I'm gonna separate them by using justify between. Let's try actually 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna open my app, and as you can see, they are separated. And first one will be our logo. Let's create, instead of span, I'm gonna create a div. It's gonna contain our logo, let's say image. By the way, we didn't create our image folder. Let's create. And I'm gonna move my images here. Okay, as you can see, we have logo here. I'm gonna use it. Let's say image folder and logo. And next to this image, I'm gonna create my website name. Let's say span, and it's gonna be port wind. So I can make this div display flex, so they can be horizontal. I will say class name is gonna be flex, like that. How I'm gonna center them vertically? Only thing I should do is using item center, and I want to give a space between this logo and this text. So I will say gap, like that. Let's reduce this image size. I will say class, let's say 8, like that. It's better right now. And I'm gonna give some style for this text. I will say class name, text will be 2x large, and I'm gonna make it bold, and text color will be indigo 900, like this. Of course, let's delete this background. It's gonna be white again. We don't need this anymore. Okay, perfect. So what about this second part? It's gonna be our links. I'm gonna delete this one, and I'm gonna create UL and my list items. And first one will be anchor tag, that because it's gonna be a link. It's gonna be home page. And let's create others. About me, services, works, and contact, like that. I'm gonna open my mobile version quickly, and as you can see, it's not a good idea to see our list here. For small screens, we are gonna use a hamburger menu here, and when we click this, we are gonna see all those lists somewhere here. So basically, we don't need this here. So I'll say class, and at the beginning it's gonna be hidden, like that. And whenever we change to middle screen, I'm gonna say flex. So it's gonna be a horizontal list. Let's try. I'm here. I'm gonna pull this to right, and okay, perfect. We are gonna see it here. We are using flexbox, so we can give a gap. But also, there is one more solution. You can give space X, and let's say 10, like that. By the way, this logo and these items are not vertically centered. So I'm gonna come here, item center. And what else we can give? I'm gonna give a color. Let's say text gray is gonna be 600. And I'm gonna make them bold. and text size will be small. Gray, bold, and small. It doesn't look good, that's because they are lowercase. To prevent this, basically I can just write here uppercase. Okay, it looks pretty good, but when I hover over, we don't see any changes. For the user experience, we can give some hover effect. I'm gonna choose all of my allies. I will say class and hover. Text gray, but this time it's gonna be 500. It's gonna be a little bit softer. Like this. So what about this last element? I'm gonna delete this 3. Instead, I'm gonna say image, and it's gonna be image folder and moon PNG. Like that. But it's too big. Let's give class quickly with 5. And also I'm gonna give cursor pointer. Okay, awesome. But in the mobile version, instead of this image, we are gonna show here a hamburger menu. So basically, I'm gonna say at the beginning it's gonna be hidden, but if it's medium screen, it's gonna be, let's say, block. Like that. So let's create our menu here. I'm gonna say div, and inside we are gonna have 3 lines. Of course, you can use any icon, but let me open my console. As you can see, we are gonna use these 3 lines. Let's create div, and I'm gonna give class, let's say width 6, height is gonna be 1 pixel or smaller, we will see. Background will be black, like that. As you can see, it's a little bit thicker, so let's say 0.5. Okay, it's better, I think. And I'm gonna create 2 more. Okay, they are here, but we cannot see that because they are stick together. To prevent this, I'm gonna give here a class name. I can make it flexbox and column, but also, as I said, we can give any space. So it's gonna be space Y, and let's say 1. As you can see, it's another solution. And for medium screens, we shouldn't see this hamburger menu. That's because we are gonna have our items here, our links. So I will say if it's empty, it's gonna be hidden. By the way, I can say cursor pointer. Let's try other screens. Okay, it's coming to medium screen and boom. Perfect. So for small screens, I can create my menu here. When we click this button, it's gonna be here. I'm gonna come here and create one more list. Actually, I can directly copy from here. Like that. And we don't need any class. I'm gonna delete them. So let's give class name for this. It's gonna be hidden. And when we click this button, we are gonna use JavaScript and change this display property. But to see better, I'm gonna delete this. Otherwise, we will not be able to see. Let's give background color. It's gonna be again indigo 900, like that. But there's a problem here that because it's inside our navbar and it behaves like a third item here. But I don't wanna do this. It's gonna be independent from this navbar. Basically, I'm gonna give absolute positioning, and I will say left 0, top 0, and as you can see, it starts from here. And if I say width full, it's gonna cover all these width. I can give some padding, let's say 10, and I wanna give a border radius here for this bottom. To do this, I'm gonna use rounded. As you can see, many options here. Let's use 3x large. As you can see, it's rounded, but I forgot here. I'm not gonna use for top. So it's gonna be rounded only bottom, like that. Let's give space between them. Space Y 10. And let's change text color. It's gonna be white. Okay, perfect. And I'm gonna center them. To do this, I'm gonna use text center. Like that. So I can write here hidden. We don't need this anymore. Okay, awesome. But how we are gonna make this interactive? when we click this button, it's going to be open up here. To do that, we are going to use a JavaScript, but don't worry, it's really easy one. You don't need to be advanced or something. I will say app.js, and we are going to use this JS file inside our HTML. Before this body tag, I'm going to say script, and I'm going to give my source, which is app.js. Actually, let's write here main folder app.js. Okay, let's try if it works or not. I will say console log. It works. I'm gonna come here, and as you can see, it's here. So what I'm gonna do is choosing this hamburger menu element and choosing my mobile menu here. And after that, we are gonna create some functions. But how we are gonna choose them? It's really easy, nothing complicated here. I'm gonna say const hamburger menu. I mean this button. And here I'm gonna use document and query selector. With this method, we can choose any item inside this HTML. But to do that, we should specify our items. For example, for this hamburger button, I'm gonna give an ID. Let's say hamburger. So we can use this ID. I'm gonna write hashtag. If you are using an ID, don't forget you should write hashtag. If you are using a class name, it should be dot, but we are using ID. And I'm gonna create one more, and it's gonna be menu. And for this menu, I'm gonna give ID menu. Okay, we have our items right now. What I'm gonna do is to give a click event for this button, and inside this click event, we are gonna change our menu class here. We are gonna delete this hidden. To do this, I'm gonna choose my button here, and I will say add event listener, and our listener will be click event, and I'm gonna write here a function. Whenever we click this button, we are gonna change menu's class name. So basically, in the first click, we should delete this hidden class name, but when we click one more time, it's gonna be hidden again. Basically, we should toggle this hidden class name. Only thing we should do is to give toggle function and hidden class name. Let's try. I'm gonna click menu class name. It's not class name, I'm sorry, it's gonna be class list. Because it's gonna look inside this class list, but it's gonna change only this one. Let's try again. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, it's here. I'm gonna click again, but it's not here. That's because we are using absolute positioning here, and it covers our button. To prevent this, I'm gonna give here Z index. Let's say 10 or 20, doesn't matter. By default, every element has Z index 0. In this case, our menu will be 0. And if we give any index number more than 0, it's gonna be over this menu. Let's see. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, it's here. I'm gonna click again, and it's gone. It's that easy. But in this case, our button is still black here. Basically, we can give any background color for this line container. Let's do that here. So I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, but this time I'm gonna choose menu button, and I'm gonna toggle BG white. And it looks much better. Of course, what you can do, you can choose those lines, you can give ID, and you can change this black colors. But also, as I did, you can give this background. And it looks really stylish. I really like it. So that's all. So we've finished our navbar. Let's take care of this introduction content. So let's write here what we are gonna need. Firstly, we are gonna need an image. As you can see, we are gonna have this image, this animated text, this circle, and finally this div. Here, circle, and finally other text. Let's say texts. Let's create our image. I'm gonna choose my image in this folder and man.png. Like that. I'm gonna open mobile version. And what I'm gonna do is making this image position absolute and align this image to right and bottom. So it's gonna be somewhere here. So let's give class name. It's gonna be absolute. Bottom will be 0 and right will be 0. As you can see, there's a problem here. That because we are using absolute, but we didn't give relative positioning for its parent, which is this blue div. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here and say relative. Okay, perfect. But this image is too big. Let's give some height. I'm gonna say height 5 of 6. And I'm gonna give object width cover. That because we are giving only height here, basically its size is not gonna change. We set right 0, but it starts from here. That because our image is a little bit big. Let me show you. As you can see, it starts from right 0. Maybe I could crop this image from here, but anyway, it can stay. It's not a big deal. And for big screens, after LG screen, I'm gonna center this image. So if I say LG left 0 and MX auto, it's gonna center my image like that. It's on the right, it's on the center. Perfect. So let's create a circle here. For small screens, I'm gonna hide that circle, but when it comes to LG screen, it's gonna be under this image. So let's create, I'm gonna say div, class name, at the beginning it's gonna be hidden, and for LG it's gonna be block. And position will be absolute. I'm not gonna center this circle here. Instead, I'm gonna give some space. Let's check here. As you can see, it starts from here. So I should give negative bottom position. So I will say minus bottom and 104. Let's check here. Of course, we didn't give any width and height. If you check sizes, you are gonna see that the maximum size is 96, which is 24 RAM. But I wanna make this bigger. Let's check actually. I'm gonna say 96 again. And let's give background color is gonna be again indigo 900. And I'm gonna make this circle, so I'll say rounded and full. And of course I'm gonna center this. To do that I'm gonna give right 0, left 0, and if I say MX auto, it's gonna center this horizontally. Oops, why it's here? Oh, it's gonna be bottom of course, not B. Okay, and as you can see, its size is too small. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna customize my sizes. I'm gonna open Tailwind config and I'm gonna extend my sizes. To do that, I will say spacing and I'm gonna add one more item. You can give any number or any text. It really doesn't matter. Let's say big and it's gonna be 48 RAM. Let's see. I'm gonna change this width and height. It's gonna be big like that. It's much better. But I want to see this circle under this image. I will say -z and let's say 10. Remember, our image is 0 and it's going to be minus, which means it's going to appear before this image. Okay. By the way, there is a problem here. We should give the index for this navbar also. It's here. Let's say z10. Okay, perfect. But there is another problem, that because our circle is overflowing, to prevent this, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say overflow hidden, like that. Okay, so let's create our animated div here. And it's gonna be a little bit complicated because for small screen, for medium screen, for large and X large screen, it's gonna be different position. Let's say div, and inside I'm gonna create a span. let's say freelance, and I'm gonna create a p tag, and we are gonna write our animated text like this. But before this animation, let's write just developer. We are gonna fix this later, and I wanna give some class for them. I will say text gray 600, and it's gonna be red. Let's say 500. Let's give our first position. For small screens, I will say top 103. Let's see actually. I'm gonna open mobile version, and as you can see, it's somewhere here. Maybe let's give some space here. I'm gonna say left 5 maybe. Okay, perfect. By the way, let's increase this font size. I'm gonna say text X large. Okay, perfect. And after this small screen, somewhere here, I'm gonna give more space. So let's say after small screen, left will be 10, like that. And I'm gonna increase font size, let's say 4x large, like that. And if it's more than medium screen, I'm gonna move this more. It's gonna be somewhere here. Let's say left 104. And I'm gonna increase font size again. I will say MD left 104 and MD text 6 X large. And when it comes to large screen, I'm gonna move back to left 5 because our item is full screen right now. I will say LG left 5 again. Okay, perfect. And finally for X large, let's move it. Actually, let's close this. As you can see, it's too far right now. I'm gonna give new position. X large left will be 46. Okay, of course you don't have to give these exact numbers. Just play around it and try to find the perfect position. By the way, I can increase this font size also. I'm gonna say X large and text will be 7x large. Like that. Maybe I can make this bold. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna create this animation, but before, let's create our text div here and add those texts and this button. I'm gonna come here and create new div. I'm gonna create h1. Let's say hi, I'm John. I'm gonna create a p tag, and I will just copy paste my text. I don't want to waste time. And finally, a button. You can create a button or anchor tag, it doesn't matter. Let's create anchor. And it's gonna go to contact. And I will say hire me. And for small and medium screens, we are not gonna see it. After large screen, we are gonna see it somewhere here. Let's do that. I'm gonna say class name hidden, and for LG it's gonna be flags. Of course it's not gonna be horizontal, it's gonna be flags column. Let's give our position. I'm gonna center this vertically. What I mean by that, as you can see, it's on the middle of the screen, so it means it's gonna be top 0, bottom 0, and margin will be auto. And for the right side, I can give 10 or something like that. Let's try. I will say top 0, bottom 0, oops, and auto. We are gonna center, and finally right 10. I'm gonna give a background color, and it's gonna be just white. And maybe padding inside. Okay, something is wrong. That because its height is full right now. To prevent this, I'm gonna give height and fit. As you can see, it's gonna fit according to our content. Okay, perfect. But we don't have any width. It contains all screen here. Let's give it. I'll say 103. Like that. Okay, awesome. Let's move this. As you can see, perfect. And I'm gonna give some gap between those items. As you remember, we said flex column. I will say gap and 5. Like that. And I'm gonna give some border radius. Let's say rounded and let's say small. Okay, it's too small. Let's say maybe MD. Okay, it's better. And I'm gonna give some box shadow. It's really easy. I will just say shadow and let's say X large. As you can see, it looks better. If I give different color, you are gonna see better, I think. I will say shadow red. As you can see, it's here. Of course, I'm gonna delete this. And what else? It's enough, I think. Let's take care of our texts here. For this H1, it's gonna be for X large, font will be bold, and it's gonna be indigo. Like that. So for this text, let's give gray 400, and our link will be BG indigo, and text will be white, text X large. Like that. I'm gonna give some padding, let's say 3, and I'm gonna decrease this width. It's full right now, but I'm gonna fit to my content. Remember, W fit like this. Maybe I can increase this padding between top and bottom. So what I'm gonna do is gonna be X, only horizontal, but for vertical, it's gonna be just 2. Okay, let's give border radius. I'll say rounded MD, and font will be semi-bold, like that. By the way, why it's not gray? I said 2, it's gonna be text. Okay, awesome. Let's check again. Mobile version for tablets, bigger screens, full screen. Okay, let's take care of this animation. To do that, we are gonna use this small library. As you can see, it's almost 2 kilobytes, and only thing we should do is importing this JavaScript file and creating our animation instance. As you can see, we are gonna choose our item. In this case, it's gonna be, where is our item? This P tag, and instead of this developer, we are gonna write those texts. You can write here whatever you want. And for options, let's check here. As you can see, we can write type speed, delete speed, how many milliseconds we are gonna wait before deleting, and it's gonna be something like that. As you can see, let's come here and open up this JavaScript. I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna create new file here. Let's say auto typing, and I'm gonna paste. You can check this code here, and after that, finally, let's come back. I'm gonna create this instance and paste here. It's gonna be developer, designer, and author. So let's choose our selector. Remember how we are doing this. We are providing here our ID, let's say text. In this case, of course, I should provide here an ID, which is text. So basically, it's gonna choose this P tag, and it's gonna write all those example texts. Of course, to run this JavaScript file, I should import this auto typing JS. Okay, it's here. Perfect. You can play around those speeds. For example, I will say 100, so it's gonna be slower, like that, and it looks awesome. It's that easy. So we finished our first section. Let's take care of this About Me section. Firstly, we are gonna have a container here. Again, we are gonna make this margin auto, so it's gonna start from here and end here. And after that, it's gonna be flexbox. And in this flexbox, we are gonna have two sections. One of them will be this image section, and second one will be those texts. But before this container, I'm gonna create another div, that because when we apply our dark mode, this space and this right space should be dark also. So let's do that. I'm gonna create here. By the way, this div, when did I create this? Okay, it's gonna be under introduction and it's gonna be about page, about section. And I'm gonna create a container. I will say mx auto, and inside this container we are gonna have left side and right side. For this left side, I'm gonna create a div and it's gonna contain two items. First one will be those dots. This is an image. It's gonna be position absolute and position will be top 0, left 0, so it's gonna stay here. And second item will be our main image. Let's create, I will say div. Of course, it's gonna be relative, that because it's a parent. And my first image. And it's gonna be image and dots. Let's give class name and position will be absolute. But before, let's see. I'm gonna close here, by the way. Okay, as you can see, it's really big. Let's say width 1.4. Height will be the same and it's gonna be position absolute, top 0, left 0. Let's create our second image. To do that, I'm gonna create a div here. And inside we are gonna have our image and portrait.png. I'm creating here div that because I'm gonna make this something like a circle. As you can see, something like that, but these dots look a little bit weird. I can give here object with cover, or let's delete this one. Okay, it's much better right now that because it's a square, we don't have to give any width. It's gonna be the same size. And what about this div? I will say class age will be full. It's gonna contain all our div here, and I will say rounded full. It's not gonna be totally circle, that because our image here is not a square. It's gonna be something like that. But of course we cannot see it, that because it's overflowing. Let's say overflow hidden. But there's a problem here. It's still too big, that because we don't have any item here. Let's try to write something for the right side. And let's make it flexbox. And as you can see, it looks awesome. By the way, for these dots, I can give z index. Let's say -10. Okay, perfect. And our about section next to this item. To prevent this, I'm gonna give some padding here. Let's say padding vertically is gonna be 40. Okay, so let's give some gap between them. It's a flexbox. I can give gap. It's gonna be 20. Like that. And let's create those items. I'm gonna say div. Let's move this hello here and let's try to center this. If I say my auto, as you can see, it's gonna be centered. And again, it's gonna be flex, but flex direction will be column. And I'm gonna give gap between each items. Let's check here. As you can see, each space will be 3. I'm gonna create my first item, about me. I'll say class name, text, indigo, 600, and font will be bold. Like that. Let's create others. Better design, better experience. I'm gonna delete them and I'm gonna say text 3x large and font will be medium. Like that. Let's create our p tag here. As you can see, I'm gonna copy this I will say p tag and I'm gonna paste it. Let's create quickly our class. Text will be gray 400. I said 2 again, it's gonna be text. Okay, so let's create our items here. It's gonna be an h2 text, and after I'm gonna create a div here. This gray one will be parent, and this indigo will be our percentage. Let's do that. After this p tag, I will say h2. First one will be html. I will say class name, text gray 400, and font will be medium. And after that, I'm gonna create my progress bar. And this parent will be width full, bg gray, and I'm gonna give h, and it's gonna be 1.5, and it's gonna be rounded. Let's say MD. Like that. And inside this parent, I'm gonna create one more. Let's copy this actually. I'm gonna paste, but this time it will be different. Actually, for this one, it's 100%. As you can see, it can stay. But color will be different. Indigo 600. Like that. And I'm gonna create others. Let's copy these and duplicate. It's gonna be JavaScript. And it's gonna be React, for example. And I'm gonna change this size. Let's say something like that. And for this one, okay, it looks awesome, but we didn't arrange this for the mobile version. Let's see. As you can see, it's pretty ugly right now. What I can do, firstly, I'm gonna give a padding between this left and right side. Let's find out our main div here. I'm gonna say padding X is gonna be 10, like that. And for this container, it was a flex box, but basically I can make it flex column. Actually, let's say reverse, so we are gonna see this text before this image. I'm gonna save. As you can see, it's here. And when it comes to LG screen, flex will be row. Let's check. I'm gonna close mobile version. As you can see, it's column. By the way, we can center this. Item center. Like that. And when it's a bigger screen, it's gonna be horizontal. Perfect. So we finished this section also. Let's create these services. Again, a main div. After that, a container. Those are gonna be top section, and those cards will be bottom. Let's do that. By the way, what are those? Okay. Let's create service or services. We are gonna have main div inside a container, and inside top and bottom. Class name will be container mx auto, and inside this top I'm gonna create h1 tag. It's gonna be services. Actually, it's gonna be exactly the same. Let's copy this and paste here, and one more h1, and I will say, what do I offer? And it's gonna be text 3x large, like that. Let's create a p tag, and I'm gonna paste here. Class, and let's see. As you can see, those are not centered. How I can fix that? Basically, I can give a parent here, and I can cover them. And I'm gonna say flex box, flex column. I'm gonna give gap between them, and I will say item center, like that. But this p tag is really long. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller, so I will say with half of this parent. And I can center this text. Text center. Awesome. And finally, I'm gonna give text gray and 400. Let's take care of this bottom side. As you can see, we are gonna have 6 cards inside. Let's create div, and inside we are gonna create cards. Let's create here a class. It's gonna be a flexbox, but in this case, if we create 6 cards, they are all gonna be horizontal. To prevent this, I'm gonna use flex wrap. Basically, it's gonna be a flexbox, but if our cards don't fit in this section, in this div, basically it's gonna move other items into new line, like that. Let me show you actually. I'm gonna create a card here. It's gonna include image. It's gonna be icon, PNG, H1 tag. Let's see here. UX UI design. It's gonna be a P tag. I'm gonna copy here. And finally, A tag. And it's gonna be read more. Like so. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna save here. Okay, it's here. If I create one more card or 2 more, as you can see, they are getting smaller. If I add more example here, they all are gonna be in the same line. But if I say flex wrap here, as you can see, it separates them like that. It's gonna separate them according to our screen size. As you can see, only 1 item, 2 items, and if our screen is bigger, it's gonna be 3, 4, whatever. So I'm gonna delete those cards here. After finishing one of them, we can duplicate. I'm gonna delete them, and let's give a class name. For the mobile version, width will be full. Of course, in this case, we are gonna need some padding here. Let's say 5, like that. And if it's bigger than small screen, I'm gonna reduce this size. Let's come here. I will say MD. Width will be 412. Basically, it's gonna be 33%, like that. By the way, I'm gonna give some shadow. Let's say X large. And it's gonna be rounded. Let's say large. Okay, as you can see, we don't have any padding. Let's give. It's gonna be 5. And I'm gonna separate those items. To do that, I can make flex and flex column. And gap between, let's say 3. Okay, but this image is really big right now. Let's give class name, and I'm gonna say width 10. It's gonna be 40 pixels. Okay, perfect. Font will be medium. And text will be large. Like that. And for the P tag, it's gonna be a gray color. Text gray 400. And for this text, this link is gonna be indigo. 600. It's gonna be semi-bold. And text will be small. Okay, let's create other items. I hope I didn't forget anything. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you can see, 3 items. If I shrink this, it's gonna be 1 item. Of course, you can change this width. If you wanna see 2 items, you can make it bigger, but for me, it's totally okay. It looks pretty good. By the way, for big screens, we don't need this padding anymore. Let's delete this. Where is our container here? I'm gonna say, if it's not a mobile device, it's gonna be padding 0. But this space is not enough. And for here, what I can do, let's open up mobile version first. As you can see, I can increase margin here. I'm gonna choose all of them, all of those cards. And I'm gonna say MY and it's gonna be 3. Like that. And if it's bigger, I'm gonna give more space. So let's say if it's MD, it's gonna be 10. Like that. Okay, it's better. I'm not sure should they be stick together or I should decrease this number and give here justify between. Of course, for this screen it doesn't look good. Just play around here and find for yourself. I think this is better. Let's check here. Okay, it's same, I think. By the way, our application is larger. As you can see, it starts from here and ours is here. I think I use different breakpoints. I don't know which one is better. Here is the same. Only thing is this container. What do you think, guys? Which one is better? Okay, in the previous application, I used those screens, and in our application, we are using only this screen. We are extending. If I delete this, as you can see right now, it's the same. Only difference is font type. It can stay like that. And let's take care of this portfolio. It's gonna be really similar. We are gonna have top and bottom. We are gonna have cards. Only difference, we don't need any text inside. It's gonna be only image. I'm gonna copy these services. Let's copy from here. And I will paste. It's gonna be portfolio or works. Portfolio, works and projects, and this text. And for those cards, let's delete those items. Instead, we are gonna create image, and source will be image folder item.png, like that. And we don't need this flexbox anymore. We have only an image. Okay, like that. Maybe I can give margin 1. But I'm gonna decrease this size. For large screen, it's gonna be 105. Like that. Of course, I'm gonna need 2 more items. Okay, perfect. Let's check our mobile version. Okay, perfect. Small screens. For medium screen, I can increase this size. I'm gonna choose them again. And it's gonna be 5. Okay, it's much better. And if it's a large screen, it's gonna be 4 items like that. Perfect. Let's check here. Okay, awesome. And we are gonna need this contact section. We are gonna use exactly the same titles, and after we are gonna create a form. I will say contact. We are gonna have a main div and a container. And we will have top Actually, I don't need to write them anymore, but anyway. If you are using Tailwind, it's really hard to find your code, so it's gonna be really useful. Let's actually copy this top section and paste here. It's gonna be contact. I have a question. And this text. And here I'm gonna create a form. And we are gonna have, let's see, 2 inputs and 1 text area because it's bigger, and 1 button here. I'll say input text, and I'm gonna give a placeholder. It's gonna be name, surname, 1 more, and it's gonna be email. Type will be email also. And I'm gonna create a text area. Let's delete them. And again, I'm gonna give placeholder, and it's gonna be message. And finally, let's say button and submit. As you can see, they are horizontal. Let's take care of this. I'm gonna say class name. It's gonna be flags column. And I'm gonna give gap. And I'm gonna center them. Okay. Of course, we are gonna give additional styles, but first I'm gonna open my mobile version. By the way, let's give margin here. I will say margin top 5. And let's take care of these inputs. I will say class name. First here I wanna give some padding inside, and I will say width full. And I'm gonna give some border. To do that, we are gonna use ring like that. And as you can see, it contains all this screen because we said width full. To prevent this, let's say P8 is gonna be a padding. And I can change this ring color. Ring indigo, let's say 300. And I'm gonna give border radius. To do that, of course, we are using rounded. It's gonna be small. Right now, I will do the same thing for others. I'm gonna copy here. Like that. And for this button, let's say class name again. Width will be half. I'm gonna give background color. It's gonna be 600. Text will be white. And font will be medium. Okay, let's give some padding. Remember what we did before. PX3, PY2. It's gonna be like that. Let's give cursor pointer and border radius. I will say MD and cursor pointer. Okay, for the mobile version, it looks pretty nice. But here, as you can see, it's really big. I will say for MD screens, it's gonna be width half. So I'm gonna choose them. And I will say MD width half. As you can see, it's much better. For small screen and larger ones. If I make this bigger, it's gonna get larger and perfect. Right now we need only this footer, and after that we are gonna take care of dark mode. Actually, it's gonna be exactly the same thing with this navbar, but instead of this list, I'm gonna write a text. So I'm gonna go to navbar. And I'm gonna copy this. And I will paste for footer. Of course, it's not gonna be navbar, it's gonna be just a div. And we don't need fixed. And background color will be gray 800. We don't need the index here. Okay, it's here. I'm gonna change this logo color. It's gonna be white. We don't need this list anymore. Instead, I'm gonna write a text. Let's see what we have. Okay, I'm gonna copy this. It's gonna be a span and I will paste. But for the mobile version, I don't wanna see this text. I just wanna see this logo and my social media accounts. So I will come here and I'm gonna say hidden. If it's empty, it's gonna be block. Let's say font medium and text white. And we don't need this hamburger menu. Instead, I'm gonna create a div. It's gonna be flexbox and I'm gonna separate my social media icons. And let's create first one. It's gonna be Facebook. And class name will be v4 and cursor pointer. Like that. Let's add others. I will say Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Like that. If I close here, of course we don't need this moon. Let's delete. Okay, perfect. There's a mistake here that because they are really close. Let's go to portfolio. For this one, maybe I can say padding 40. Of course, only vertical. Okay, it's much better. By the way, when we click any of these links, it's not going anywhere. That's because for sections, we didn't give any ID. What I mean by that? As you can see, we are using only homepage here. For this one, I will say about services, works, and contact. I will do the same thing for here. And for about me section here, I'm gonna give my ID. It's gonna be about. In this case, if I click here, it's gonna go to about page. By the way, when I click one of these items, I'm not supposed to see this menu anymore. Let's come here. I'm gonna choose those links. Of course, I need ID for that. Let's choose them and I'm gonna give ID. And it's gonna be, let's say, H link. So I'm gonna choose all of those items. Remember what we are doing. It's gonna be H link, but we don't have only one item. In this case, I'm gonna use query selector all. It's gonna choose all of items. And when I click one of them, we are gonna close our menu. So I'll say H link. Actually, it's gonna be links. We have 5 links here. I'm gonna use here a loop. I will say for each, and for each link, I'm gonna create event listener. I will do exactly the same thing here. I can copy this, paste. When we click any link, we are gonna close our menu. Let's see. Opening, clicking, and it's gone. Perfect. So let's do the same thing for others. I mean this ID, services, works, and contact. Let's see right now. I'm clicking here. We are going to About Me page, Services, Works, and Contact. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do is taking care of this dark mode. When you are using Tailwind, it's really easy to handle that. Only thing we should do is to provide dark properties like that. As you can see, text is this color, but if it's in dark mode, text will be white. Of course, we are gonna toggle our dark mode by using this button. If you are using toggle, you should add this property for config file. You are gonna understand everything better right now. I'm gonna come here and dark mode and class. Let's try. I'm gonna go to Navbar, and remember it was background white, but this time I will say if it's a dark mode, background will be slate and 900. And if I come here and change my body class, it's gonna be dark, and as you can see, it's black. By the way, there is a problem here for this animation. Okay, I forgot deleting this developer. Okay. As you can see, it's that easy. So let's change those items. It was gray 600. I'm gonna say if it's dark, text will be gray 100. Like that. Also, I can change here. I will say dark, text will be white. Like that. What about this color? I will say dark mode is gonna be from slate 800 to slate 900. By the way, there is no space here. Let's see. As you can see, from 800 to 900, it's not gonna work anymore because our parent is dark. So I can do the same thing for others. For example, this div, it was white. I'm gonna say dark, again slate 900, like that. But in this case, we cannot see our shadow. Let's change this also. I will say dark mode again, and shadow will be slate and 800. As you can see, it's much better. What about here? I'm gonna do the same thing again and again. About dark mode slate 900, services 900, works, and contact. As you can see, it's all dark. But let's change some additional items. For example, these texts here. I'm gonna choose them and I will say dark mode, text will be white. Like this. And here, let's search for it. Dark mode will be text white again. I'm gonna copy this and I will do the same thing for these titles. I'm gonna choose all of my cards and paste it here. Like that. And for this one, and here. And what about these inputs? Let's change them also. I will choose my items and I will say if it's a dark mode, BG slate 800, and I'm gonna delete those rings. Dark ring 0, and text will be white. Dark text white. Okay, it looks much better right now. But how we are gonna change dark mode using this button? It's really easy. At the beginning, it's not gonna be dark. I'm gonna come here and choose body here. It's a tag name, so we don't need this hashtag. And also, we are gonna choose moon button. Let's give an ID. I will say ID moon. And when I click on moon button, I'm gonna toggle body's class name. So I will say moon. We don't need this. I'm gonna change body's class name and I'm gonna toggle dark key. When we click, it's gonna write here dark. When we click again, it's gonna delete. Let's refresh the page. I'm gonna click, as you can see, dark mode. Click again. Perfect. As you can see, it's really easy to handle dark mode in Tailwind. And it's pretty all, I think. It's enough for a beginner project. Of course, in the future, we are gonna create more complex projects. For example, a social media application or an e-commerce application. And when you use Tailwind with React or Next.js, you are gonna see that they actually make more sense. In plain HTML, it's still okay, but it's really hard to read and it's really hard to remember what you have done, what you have created. But as I said, for the future projects, it's gonna be much more effective. So let's deploy our application. It's really easy to do. It's gonna take just a minute. I'm gonna open up my Hostinger panel. And here, I'm gonna choose File Manager. It's gonna open my website directory. As you can see, public HTML. It's our main folder. I'm gonna click here. And as you can see, there is a default file here. I'm gonna delete this. Let's open up our website folder. And only thing I should do is to copy app.js, typing.js, CSS folder, image folder, and index.html. Right after that, I'm gonna drag those files and drop here. And that's all. Let's check our website, and as you can see, it's here. Of course, our connection is not secure right now. Let's open up homepage, and as you can see, this is our free SSL certification. Let's set up. I'm gonna choose my website name and install SSL. As you can see, its status is installing, and right now it's ready. Let's try. When you refresh your page, you are gonna see that your connection is secure right now, and our website is working. Awesome. It's that easy. If you want to, you can deploy your other applications here also. And if you want to use only one domain, you can create other subdomains and deploy your websites in those subdomains. And that's all. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video. You can support Lama Dev using the link in the description below or joining the channel. And don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.